So, like, I'm kind of curious, how does that, you said you were an athlete.
Yes.
So what sports were you an athlete in then?
I was in running. I was in running hurdles.
Okay.
My favorite was 400 meter hurdles. I became Danish champion. I became record holder. Ready to compete at the European level. Also in the national team and so on. And competing against other countries.
Okay. So it seems like you had a little bit of that competitive streak, or...
But it was mostly competing with myself.
Okay.
I enjoyed that. I kind of knew that I could. The idea was not so much that I was winning over them. I wanted to do my best.
Yeah.
And then it became fun. And that is nearly what peak experience is about. How to you have a qualitative experience, not a result. That's the difference. And I have always liked that.
Okay.
But of course that is also part of the character.
Yeah.
So I'm switching back and forth between our character work and the peak. It's like when in terms of the character structure, I at that time was very mental and was very early meat structure.
Okay.
So therefore it's like it doesn't become a competition against other people. It becomes more a competition with myself. Can I excel and do my best? And that was the fun of it. And I think already as a small child, running around and being able to run very fast already, then it felt alive. So I kept doing it because it feels good.
Yeah.
And I like to feel good. Many other areas was not fun to do, but to run was, then I felt myself. And then later on, of course, then I learned to put words on it and therefore be able to expand the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's nearly like I have tried to put up hurdles for myself in my life. And every time I do that, then it's like I force myself to excel and actually be more happy. That's what you're thinking.
That's what I think. He's happier right now.
Yeah, so the hurdles really are sort of a metaphor for your life in a way.
Yes. And if things are too easy, you have to find a way to make it more difficult.
Interesting.
Well, it also fits with another guy that is writing in terms of peak experience, but he writes about flow.
Okay.
Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He's a big name in writing about flow.
Yeah.
And in order to hit flow, things cannot be too easy, because then it's dull and you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
It cannot be too difficult.
Okay.
Because then you also stop doing it. But if you find that middle pace, then you're in flow.
Yeah.
And that's what I like to do.
So would you define peak experience and flow state differently, or would you say they're the same thing?
They're close. They're not the same.
So how would you distinguish them?
I would say that peaks are, I would call they're higher, because it's like, of course flow is satisfying, and peak is not only satisfying, it's like blissful satisfying, and I think the energy is higher, you have many more elements that are present in the peak experience than in the flow. Flow can be for everybody. It can be a work thing, where you just feel okay. Then you are in flow. But peak is like really a time where a situation where the time stands still or goes extremely fast. Like being together. Like if we have it now, it's like then I kind of forget how long time we have been sitting here talking. It feels like maybe, wow, this is like 3 hours, and maybe it only took 10 minutes or so. That kind of change in time perspective is one of the features. Also that it becomes like we are together, and even though there are walls and everything, it becomes like a tunnel contact. That's another thing. Sensations, all sensations, senses are being very sharpened. We hear much more clear, we see much more clear, colors become much more clear. There is a blissfulness. We don't have bliss as a word in Danish, funny enough, but it's like a heart opening.
Yeah.
And it feels like the most wonderful, positive experience you have ever had. I also noticed that no matter how many years ago you had it, there's always like a crystal-like thing, a diamond-like thing you remember. So you can always like pull it up again and then you can expand it.
Yeah.
What else?
What could you do to have that experience more frequently?
That is part of my job.
Yeah.
That is my work. That is what I found out, that if I can interview people about their peak experiences, then we can also find out what are the elements that are present in the peak experience. And by elements I mean, or aspects, was this happening in nature? Was it daytime, nighttime? Is it were there many people together? Were you alone? What colors were present, etc. Because the idea is that we can put those things into our life.
Okay.
One example, we're sitting here in a room with very big windows. One example is that today a manager in a big government company, when she was a student, she was having an examination together with other students, and then you go into the gym area because it's a big room and you can have many tables sitting. She was sitting there with her exercises and her assignments, having to figure out what to write and so on. And when she looked at the job description, then the sun went into the big windows and engulfed her totally. And in that moment when this happened, poof, then she kind of knew the answers to what she had to do. So it took a very short time to answer and just leave. And it was correct. So after that, when she tells this as part of the peak experience, I ask her, at your job, what kind of windows do you have? Do you have access to sun? And she's, wow, fuck, I have north window, which means that there's no sun.
Yeah.
And also the windows are very small, so there's not very much light. So I said to her, come on, you're the boss, maybe you can go home and do something about it. Oh yes. And then next time, the next workshop, she came back and said, okay, now I found another one, another with west windows, big windows. And it made me more happy. And that happiness, that joy, spread out to all her personnel. So it's like it lifts the life quality up.
So it seems that there's a strong environmental component to sort of facilitating the potential for a peak experience to occur.
Yeah. Many people, they have peak experiences in nature.
Yeah.
So I ask them, well, at your workplace or at home, do you have nature there? Do you have plants? Do you have and so on? No, I'm working in a concrete building and there's no nature inside. But what about? Then I suggest to them, how about taking some of the nature? Buy some plants. You remember your peak experience involves being in nature.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. But small plants are not enough for me. I want big logs. This is okay. You're the manager. They buy, they haul them in.
Wow.
And then again, the joy that comes from that, and the joy that spreads to other people. One more example. Part of the peak experience was that the person was like together, and then the person was alone, and together and alone, and then it happens, the opening for the peak. So I'm saying this because being alone also seems to be part of it.
Okay.
So therefore, in your job, do you ever close the door so you have time, have a meeting with yourself?
Yeah.
No, it's like we have an open door policy.
Yeah.
Well, think about it.
Yeah.
Because here you just describe it, that that is part of what brings you to peak experience, and say, wow, you're right. Then she goes home and she instructs the secretary to guard the door, so she will have a 1 hour meeting with herself, like during the midday. And she becomes happy, the secretary becomes happy, and the rest of the people becomes happy. So we're lifting everybody's life experience,
Yeah.
life quality.
Mhm.
That's the idea that I'm using and finding out how to use.
Mhm.
And that is what I've done. Well, I could call it tons of interview with, you can say, everybody.
Mhm.
In the start, I did interview with famous sports people or ordinary sports people.
Yeah.
And the famous ones I did in 1984 at the Olympic Games in Los Angeles. I went out to Los Angeles and got hold of former gold medal holders and world record holders and asked them about their peak experience and so on. But I saw that everybody had them.
Yeah.
That is also Maslow's old idea, that we all have them. There are a few percentage that are deniers, that say we don't have them.
Okay.
But it's more character thing that they don't want to accept it.
Do you think there's some people that have more peak experiences than others?
Yes, but I think it's because they're more open for them. They're not so shut down.
Okay.
So again, if you notice how the peak experience has been building up,
Mhm.
then you can prepare yourself for a possible peak experience. You cannot do it, you cannot make it happen, but you
Yeah.
can prepare yourself.
Yeah.
And then it seems that there are some outside things that also have to happen.
Okay.
So that really becomes a peak. But you can prepare yourself, and in the preparation you already lift your life quality.
Yeah.
So that is wonderful.
So what was your first peak experience?
As I remember it, it's like being probably 6-7 years old when in the building complex where I lived, there were many kids in the yard playing soccer.
Okay.
And I'm the youngest and therefore the smallest, and they're always put on the goalie, so the other ones are playing and shooting, and then the ball was going towards the goal, and I thought it would come in here. I would like jump up to stop it, and then he tricked me so that he was shooting in the other side. But
Yeah.
I kind of just turned in the air and went over there and stopped
Oh, wow.
it. And of course I realized that I can't do that. I can't turn around in air and
Yeah.
fly over there, but I did it.
Yeah.
And that was the first amazing peak experience without really knowing it. But,
Yeah.
but it was always been in me. Then later on I had one in running. We had a national competition against Holland, and it took place in Holland, and I was running the 400-meter hurdles.
Mhm.
There are 10 hurdles in this race, and on hurdle number 6, when I put my leg over the hurdle, I kind of noticed that my shoelace was not tied.
Mhm.
And I kind of looked at it and wondered if I should bend over
Yeah.
and tie it
Yeah.
in air.
Yeah.
And then I realized that the first knot was still okay, so I decided that I can run on, and then I ran on. And I can't do that in that short time.
Yeah.
But that's how it is. It's like a microsecond expands, and
Yeah.
all these things can happen,
Mhm.
and it's amazing. And then I can see, well, that was the peak moment, but the whole the period up to it,
Mhm.
when I look back, that is what really made me come into this flow. Also, that competition, I set the Danish record.
Yeah.
Um,
While you tied your shoelace midair.
Exactly. Yes.
Going over the hurdle.
Yes.
Wow.
But the whole preparation is like, I went to Holland a couple of days before,
Mhm.
being together with a friend and 2 American women, and just enjoying being in Amsterdam and at the canals and so on and so on and so on. It's that kind of openness
Yeah.
helped. And you can really see this preparation, the traveling, having the peak experience, and here I am traveling, having peak experiences, or having including lifting my life quality.
Yeah.
Other people may have other things, so, but how do you find yours? How to put it into your life?
Mm-hmm.
That is, that's,
It sounds like having a novel environment that you're not really typically accustomed to being in, like on a day-to-day basis, really
yeah,
helps focus your awareness
yeah.
and helps you tap into that
Yeah.
to that presence.
It's not like when I'm at home, there's so many things,
Mm-hmm.
but actually it makes it a little more difficult to concentrate.
Yeah.
So, but when I'm out, it's like, it's a way. I have my suitcase and my papers, and this is it.
Yeah.
So I'm doing something to actually lift it.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same when I'm doing therapy. It's also like from here to here, like it's like a lot of containment is happening and focusing, and
Yeah.
so the structure around it is like it already helps to build up the energy.
Yeah. So it seems like focusing on the present moment
Yeah.
is really sort of a critical
For
key.
me, yeah. And
Yeah.
maybe also for many others, I can see that. I have one situation that is mine, but one that I put first in a short write-up about peak experience and how to do the peak experience interview. I start by referring to Bob Beamon, that is a long jumper, an American long jumper that in 1968 set an amazing world record in long jump at the Olympic Games. He improved it by nearly half a meter.
Wow.
And everybody was confused. The people that were supposed to measure it, they couldn't measure it. It was not long enough. So
Wow.
there were so many things going on. But for him himself, that was the only, he did one jump, and then he didn't jump more, and he got the gold and so on. But after that, he started asking everybody around him, what happened? And no one could answer him. No matter his coach, his girlfriend, everybody is asked what happened, nobody knew. So, but he was so intrigued by it, he kept looking, searching. And then he found, suddenly one day, he found Maslow's book, and therefore his description of peak experience.
Yeah.
And then he understood it. I had a peak experience. It was wonderful he found that out.
Yeah.
But the dilemma was that you can say 5 minutes later, the next question came, but how do I overcome it? How can I go back to jumping? And he never came back to jumping. It's like the peak moment, in a sense, became nearly like a traumatic situation for him also. And it's sad that no one could help him with that. It's like it was so locked into him. The peak moment became like locked in so he became like a trauma for him instead. And so when he told me that, I said, well, I'm sorry I wasn't there. How could I help you? Of course, because I was working with shock trauma also.
Yeah.
And to release it so that he could go back and find a way to jump again.
So why do you think it got locked in as trauma for him?
Because he was not being met by it, because he had to deal with himself. It took him so many years to find out what happened.
Okay, so he felt so alone in his experience, and no one could relate to it. That
normally a peak experience does not stop you from doing things. It's not a problem, but a shock trauma gives a negative impact on your life. But the peak experience does not always give a positive impact because you don't know how to use it.
Yeah.
And I think in his case it was more like a prevention about jumping again, the fear that he cannot jump that long, or how to do it and so on.
Yeah.
But that is of course also possible to work with. But I think it's a beautiful example.
Joel, you?
A question maybe,
Yeah.
as I'm listening, is the peak experience momentary? How long could it last?
You can say it's in the moment, and the discussion is how long can the moment be?
Yeah.
And I don't have an answer there. I know it can take long time.
But like, it's like anywhere between like, was it like 1 second and like, has anyone had a peak experience that, I mean, I guess for the person who's having the peak experience, they don't really know because they kind of lose track of time.
Yeah.
But would you say that a few minutes would be possible, or
Yeah.
do you think it
But
always?
again, remember, it's like it's building up, building up, building up, building up,
Mhm.
and then suddenly the opening comes. But what is the definition? It's like, when do we say the peak experience is there? And that happens when time disappears, when the
Yeah.
sensations are very strong and so on. Many people that talk, many women talk about giving birth is like a long peak experience, and
Wow.
that can take hours.
Yeah.
Love affairs can easily be long because you forget about time, but you're just kind of absorbed and enjoy, and you're so sharp, and everything goes so fast. Boom! It's like everything vibration goes like that. So it can take long time. Another dilemma that we often hear about in therapy is that some people are afraid of having very, very good experiences because they're so used to having bad experiences connected to having good experiences. So they think that it's inevitable that a bad experience must come after the positive, and therefore they're afraid of having a positive peak experience. And if that is the case, we can help people take it apart. So that you can have your peak experience without it necessarily going into a shock.
Yeah. So what do you think happens to those people where the good experiences and the bad experiences are coupled together so tightly within the brain?
They stay away from the positive.
What do you think created those conditions in the first place?
That it did become so closely connected that they think that they are connected.
Yeah.
So take them apart. That is, you can say, the main job of the therapist.
Yeah.
I think we heard it also in this workshop that some people have it like that.
Yeah.
That they are a little afraid of these good moments. And we heard the saying was like from one's mother or aunt or so that after good comes bad or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yes.
It was her sitting here that said it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's almost like a leveling kind of a structure again, where it's like, don't want it to be too good or too bad. It just.
But when it is like that, it's because they have these experiences.
Yeah.
Where it goes bad after the good.
Yeah. Do you think that would also be sort of late need, distrust of anything good, and that there's always you've almost got like this paranoia about everything.
Yeah. It'll be in that direction also, because first they're supported in having them, and then suddenly it goes.
Yeah, so that becomes the expectation or the belief from then on in.
Yes, it is.
So.
I've had runners report how they, when they're like the last round of a 5 kilometer race, it's like they're leaving the body. They go up and sit on the spectators' room, look at themselves, and when they're that detached from themselves, they can suddenly run faster without sensing the pain, because they're overstepping their boundaries.
Oh, so they have literally have an out-of-body experience.
Yes. So they're sitting there observing themselves. So this guy that I'm thinking of, he was like number 2. He would be like 20 meters behind number 1.
Yeah.
But then suddenly doing this trick, it's like you could just within a few seconds.
Wow.
Reach it and passing. It's pretty amazing. It's like everyone's like, what happened here?
So it seems almost like there's 2 types of peak experience then. One, because like my idea of peak experience is that you become so present in yourself.
You do, but he is present also.
But he's also
detached. But he knows it. But and he can come back to the body. But he can make this strange thing.
So it's like it becomes like a dual awareness in a way. Wow. That's interesting. Because that happens a lot in trauma as well. People, if the experience is too traumatic, they'll actually eject out of their body. And then they'll observe what's happening. So it's interesting that he was able to use it in that way and not have it be traumatic.
One idea from this, you can say, changing the perspective. I tried to use it when I was working with rowing people, and the principle was that when they were like the last 200 or 300 meters of the 2 kilometer race, then they should imagine that there are the double amount of people in the boat than there actually are. So if it's a boat with 2 people, they should like make on the vision or image that now we have 4 people.
Okay.
And then it means that they can actually relax a little.
Yeah.
And then they can keep the same pace or even go faster.
Wow. So it seems relaxing in that moment allows you to push it further.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because otherwise they're nearly at the breaking point. They can't do much more. So instead of that, they're changing the perspective. That suddenly they can relax and they can go on.
Yeah.
So in a boat with 4 people, they imagine there are 8 people.
Okay.
And in the boat with 8 people, imagine we are 16 rowers. It's amazing what that happened. I trained them to do it, and then they actually tried to do it. And at that time, they were doing either they became number 2 or number 3 in the world in those competitions, the world championships.
Nothing special as playing a basketball game. It was not important. It was a full court game. And I remember 2 things. One is I was on a fast break, and I'm coming down and someone's trying to guard me, and I passed behind my back to the man who was in front of me, and he had a layup, and that was, I had never done that before. And then in the same game then, I dribbled the ball down the court, I got into the forecourt, and I said, that man is going to come over here, this one is going to go over here, and I can dribble around him and I'll have a basket.
Okay.
And I did it. I had no idea.
But that's great.
Yeah, I had no idea, where that came from, but it's exactly what happened. So that was like a peak.
So like for you, having this kind of overview is wonderful. That is, I would say, that's part of your peak. Now that I hear it. So that idea that you put overview in whatever you're doing will like lift the quality.
Yeah, I'm going to try it again, because another one after I had a session about trauma experience, my basketball started to get better. Now this was 8-10 years ago. I mean, I'm not a kid, And I started to make very, very amazing passes, and one guy looked at me and said, "You're in some kind of zone, aren't you?" And I thought, something's going on, and just, just go like that. But one other, I think this is more like maybe flow. I think the first time I was invited to Germany to train with the Radix people, and I didn't have so much of a plan, but I gave a workshop that drew on everything I knew. And I did things I had never done before, and it was very, very impressive. And I realized when I came back that I had done what there's a way in which, there's something I call my purpose, a statement of your purpose. It's not profound, but it's sort of like pulling your qualities together and your abilities into a sentence. And then I realized I had done that. And, that's what made it so special. I had used all my abilities in the ways I wanted to interact with people for a certain, like a broad result. And that was, but that was like over days, so it must be more like flow.
Yeah, but let me try to give you my example of the difference. There is one guy that I played table tennis with, Peter Bernhardt, you know him. So, but we're pretty even in both table tennis, meaning that when we are like warmed up, then suddenly we can let the ball go and continue, and I would maybe, what do you call that, again and again I would make the ball go back and he would hit it hard, but again I would get it. So, and that was like going in flow. And that means after maybe 20 minutes or so, suddenly we get into this kind of play, and it becomes fun that we can do it. But it's not a peak, because I'm still aware of the time, and the senses are not really sharp, and okay, I know where I am, but it's really nice to get into this flow. But the peak would be maybe more the sudden movement behind you, doing new tricks out of nowhere, and a more blissful sensation. That in the flow, it's warm, it's nice, but it doesn't like that kind of openness that you are in awe, and like you can, like I could hang in the air when I was running. And just like everything stops. And it doesn't do that in the flow. It just keeps on. It's wonderful.
It's kind of funny because like in the Matrix,
in
the film, that's the bullet shots and like the slow movement. That's really trying to capture that peak experience feeling, and it's like what's made that film so iconic is because of that.
I think when he was training, that he should be able to jump from one roof to another roof. And it's very slow motion also.
I like that. Here's an aside, it's just a funny story. When The Matrix came out, I went to see it, I thought it was great, and then a friend of mine called up and he said, my wife and I are going to the movies tonight, would you like to go to the movies? We said, yes. He said, we're going to go see The Matrix. I said, oh, I saw it. He said, so did we! So we went and it was terrific.
Oh, that's funny. So what other ways do you see it developing?
Well, now that we have talked about peak experience as such is part of my contribution to put into the bodynamic. And there could be other ways also that could develop.
So how do you, like, going back to the peak experience, how do you, like, where's the crossover between peak experience and the bodynamic character structure system as well as the ego functions?
Right now it's, the crossover is more in relation to the shock trauma work.
Okay.
One day is like 12 years ago, suddenly one of our colleagues saw a peak experience the way I was teaching it, and she saw our shock way of looking at situations, that wow, it's so much that they are like.
Yeah.
And then she created the sentence, wow, in each shock trauma there is a moment of peak.
Okay.
And that means that we started to look for the peak moment, because there is a lot of resource in that. And that started to be the crossover. And that is how we use it today also. I like to use it as an independent thing to help people get hold of their resources and put them into action, into their life. But we also use it to help work with shock trauma. And can we establish the resource, the peak moment? That's why before we go deeper into the peak, into the shock trauma, then it will make reworking the shock trauma so much faster.
Okay.
And that's why we have this subtle question called, how did you actually survive?
Yeah.
That is like we're looking for the moment where you did something that is more than your egos, because your ego cannot cannot function in a shock trauma, so you're doing something anyway to survive. So, but what was that? Because it's like, it's more than you.
Yeah.
And still it's you also.